The Do's and Don'ts newsletter proudly presents this story from issue number 2, published December 1st of 2023.
Gaming and Robotics, An Obscure Connection, Part 1. By BlueMSX. Namco, Atari, and Nintendo are names that I'm sure most of you are familiar with. They are the creators of many popular games and entertainment. What you may not know is that all three of these companies also dabbled in the field of robotics. Nintendo is probably the most well-known of the bunch with their Robotic Operating Buddy, or ROB for short. ROB is a simple robot whose job was to play NES games with you, though Gyromite and Stack Up were the only games that took advantage of the robot. ROB did, however, have a secondary function to help sell the NES as a toy in the United States. After the video game crash, many stores simply weren't interested in selling new video games. Nintendo's previous attempts to market the NES in the States, including an ill-fated deal with Atari, were sadly unsuccessful. By including ROB and the NES Zapper as part of the NES Deluxe set in the States, Nintendo was able to market the NES as a toy, with ROB being used frequently in an aggressive advertising campaign that helped make the NES a big hit. As for ROB himself, the way he works is actually similar to the Zapper and, by extension, a camera. Inside ROB's eyes are special photoconduction cells, similar to the technology used in early light gun systems and modern-day solar panels. These cells look for light and produce a small amount of electricity when light touches them. Like the Zapper, a simple coding system was used. While the Zapper's code was meant to suss out false positives, such as aiming the Zapper at a light bulb instead of the target, ROB's code initiated the different actions that ROB would perform. By having the television perform different light flashes in different patterns, ROB recognizes the patterns as commands to perform actions. A system of motors hooked into simple rods and gears allow ROB to raise or lower his arms, open or close his hands, and turn his arms to the left or right. The electronics that interpret these signals are located in ROB's base, along with his battery compartment. This system effectively makes ROB a wireless accessory for the NES, needing only the light flashes from the NES to operate. ROB was designed by legendary toy designer Gunpei Yokoi, making it the unofficial successor to the electromechanical toys that he created for Nintendo before they entered the video game market. To get ROB back in the day, you had to purchase the aforementioned NES Deluxe set, which came with the NES console, Zapper, Duck Hunt, Gyromite, ROB himself, and all his accessories. You could also get ROB and Gyromite separately for a bit cheaper. Stack Up was always sold separately. A Japanese version of ROB and the two compatible games were also released with an alternate color design meant to better match the Japanese Famicom. The two games that took advantage of ROB, the aforementioned Gyromite and Stack Up, took different approaches to using ROB in their gameplay. In Gyromite, different pieces were attached to ROB's base, including a gyro holder which held two gyros, a gyro spinner, and a switch assembly in which the controller for player 2 would be inserted. ROB would also be given a set of gloves that went over his hands, enabling him to actually hold the gyros. During Gyromite's gameplay, player 1 takes control of Professor Hector and navigates him through a set of levels while simultaneously inputting commands to help ROB clear obstacles that would be otherwise unavoidable. The clearing of said obstacles is done by having ROB press either the A or B button on the second controller using the gyros, with the gyro spinner allowing one of the gyros to free float on the switch. This allows more than one button to be pressed at once. Because ROB is ultimately just pressing buttons on the controller, this game does not actually require ROB and can be played with or without the robot's assistance. Stack Up, the second game to take advantage of ROB, took a very different approach. The accessories included for ROB to play this game consisted of a set of pedestals and blocks, with the blocks sitting on top of the pedestals. The pedestals themselves attached to ROB's base. There is also a new pair of gloves to help ROB pick up the blocks. The obvious question is, if there's no place for the second controller in ROB's attachments, How does he interact with this game? Stack Up relies on your honesty. During gameplay, you input commands to tell Rob to position the blocks on the pedestals in a specified arrangement, one step at a time. Once Rob has arranged all the blocks, pressing start will tell the game that he's completed the task. Because of this, it is possible to just keep hitting start over and over to keep advancing in the game, but the game isn't much fun if you play it like that now, is it? It's also worth noting that unlike other games from the initial NES launch titles, Gyromite and Stack Up were never fully localized. Inside the NES cartridges are the Japanese Famicom circuit boards with a converter attached that allows them to play on the NES. This is why when playing Gyromite and Stack Up, they always boot up as Robot Gyro and Robot Block, the Japanese names of the games, with his initial function completed, and the retirement of the NES Deluxe set in favor of cheaper console bundles featuring the newest smash hit Super Mario Bros., Rob would fade into obscurity. Rob did make a few cameo appearances in Nintendo games in the years since, with most people in the modern day knowing him from his prominent appearance in the Super Smash Bros. Series, starting with Super Smash Bros. Brawl on the Wii. Look for Part 2 next month, where we will look at the Atari and Namco robots.
About BlueMSX. BlueMSX, or Blue for short, enjoys retro technologies, history, and learning for the sake of learning. She has been interested in retro electronics and media for nearly as long as she can remember. This fascination means that she has a lot of great stories to recount. Blue's philosophy can be summed up by the quote, "History is like a puzzle. The more pieces you have, the more sense it makes."
The DOS and Don'ts team consists of Grizzly Adam, editor, publisher, writer; Jon Mullin, assistant editor, writer; Plendlful, consulting editor; Joe Collett, associate publisher, writer; BlueMSX, writer; Yousef, writer. Visit our website at dosanddontstopmywebcommunity.org. And don't forget to write to us, submit your retro memory, or most importantly, sign up for the newsletter. The DOS and Don'ts Retro newsletter is published the first of each month. Subscribers get early access.